Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Handmaid's Tale, Season 3, Episode 3. It is called Useful. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And this is brought to you by one of our patrons, Cindy Palacios, as a sponsor of this particular series of TV reviews. Yeah, let's get into it. I feel like probably the biggest thing we're going to talk about again. We already talked about it a little bit in the last episode, but certainly in this one we're going to really dive into it, is the nature of June and Lawrence's relationship, his beliefs, attitudes, motivations.
Not as straightforward as we initially assumed.
Very straight, like. But I think what's interesting about it is that is what they're doing with June is that she's actually questioning this herself and kind of challenging him. And when she assumes that he's being good, like maybe some of us did, just based on what he did in the end of season 2, he kind of like throws it back in her face and complicates it, and does several other things to complicate it as well. But then at the same time, it's like he might actually be a genius who is almost building her up to be something, like to be this leader, to be this fighter.
It's interesting. He seems to believe in Gilead to a point. We know he was instrumental in creating, this society. And I'm not sure if he necessarily regrets that. He seems to kind of think that everything he's doing has been, trying to save the planet, right? Is what he was saying there. But okay, he's like, okay, no, but yeah, there are women who are ridiculously smart, and they need to be outside this system because they might help more. He seems to believe this.
I feel like just believing that, because that's exactly what he says in this episode, more or less. I feel like just believing that's also just taking it too much at face value. I feel like there's a bit more of a deeper. I feel like he's more intricate than that, than just to take exactly. I don't think there's truth in what he's saying. Well, I think he at least believes he thinks that.
Yes, that's what I said there. He believes that.
Right. I don't know if it's this. I don't think he thinks he has guilt, but I don't necessarily, because I think June actually did hit a chord when she accused him of having guilt. Like, oh, so you occasionally help someone to, help yourself sleep at night. Yeah, it's one thing when it's like, okay, on paper, this is what we have to do to save the planet. But once you actually see the faces or you see the people it's affecting, your ridiculous plan, all of a sudden it's a different thing. And he kind of throws it back in her face in a big way. I really love this. Probably my favorite scene of the episode, actually, is when she goes into his study at night, because he's had all the commandos over during the day. We'll talk about some of those scenes. In fact, we'll talk about one of those right now, because the big one during that scene is when he insists that she come in and serve drinks whilst he's with all the other commanders, and Waterford's there.
Yeah. He's sitting around. He's already had a bit of a one-to-one with her.
He has, and interestingly from that, because in the narration, June's very much like, well, if I'm going to be a fighter, if I'm going to lead this, I'm going to need like friends in high places, friends with power. I think the word was ally specifically. And it's not so much that I think she could see Waterford as any kind of ally, but I think she thinks she's still got some sway, like she can still manipulate him in some way, and that's kind of what she does in this scene. It's almost like a, hey, remember what season 1 was like moment, where she kind of like swoops in and tries to talk to him, like, hey, have you got any information on Lawrence that might help me? I'm very thankful. I'll always be grateful to you. She's very much playing it up, and
she is, and I can't believe this is still working on him.
I think that's kind of the point. Is like he's still enamored by this, because it's not so much that he's enamored this much by her; it's that he's enamored this much by her treating him like he's more powerful. It's his own ego here that he's fallen victim to.
He knows how this went before. Well, I assume he's learned.
As Lawrence points out later, you did a number on that house, June. You left that. The baby had been baby napped. The mother had her pinky cut off. Apparently Waterford's been demoted for all this, and then you literally left the house in ashes. Like he lists it, and I'm like, yeah, she really did do a number on that household.
Yeah, she did.
In the context of Gilead, she did a number on that household. And then Lawrence is noticing this. He's sort of, he comes over and speaks to them. And I think he's very aware, because when we get to the scene later on, he very much kind of turns the tables on her by pointing out the way she is with him. It's like, oh, did this work? Because she's like talking to him, and it's almost like she's about to go in for a kiss. Like, the kind of like, he gets up out of the chair and they're getting closer, and it's like, again, she's playing to what she thinks is his ego, and he just kind of smirks and goes, "Did this really work in Waterford, that simpleton?" And it sits down his chair. It's like, okay, he is very different. We're setting up how different he is. And I guess maybe part of, from a writing perspective, the appeal of doing a character this different, or not different, I mean, because he's different anyway, but the appeal of doing this type of character as opposed to just doing, because I think our first prediction when we saw him last season and what it was like at the end was that he would just be a good guy, he would just be an ally, and that would be a really obvious route to go, and that would work, and it would be a different status quo. This is something that we don't understand yet, which puts us in the same position as June, because June doesn't understand it yet.
It's why I said even if what his motivations are exactly what he says, you can say, oh, maybe we shouldn't just take a at face value, and absolutely not. But even if it was, that is just the truth. That's still really a fascinating set of motivations. It's quite intricate in its own right.
It makes him kind of a sociopath. It makes him,
yeah.
He's that kind of cold about it, but at the same time, because if that is the only reason why he saved Emily, if it's the only reason, it's pure cold hard logic, though she's actually quite intelligent. She's more useful saving the planet than she is being in Gilead. If that is the cold hard truth to it, then that's pretty damning to the way he thinks about people.
It is, but that's quite interesting as a way of setting him up.
Yeah, because the thing, obviously, he makes her serve drinks during the commanders meeting, and he's, because at first, because I was like sort of through my head as I was watching this scene, I was thinking of a rush of different things about what he was doing here, right? One is like this weird power play, almost like a bit of a game to sort of point out like how much power he still has, to like make her feel demeaned here. And then I thought, or does he want her to hear some of this? Like, does he intentionally want her to hear some of this conversation about what they're doing with people, and how many they're sending to the colonies, and the process of picking the Marthas, that kind of thing? Does he want her to actually hear some of this? But then, as I was thinking that, he then pulls this move where he's like, hey, of Lawrence, or of Joseph rather, you used to be an editor, right? You used to edit books, and yeah. So if I asked you for books and you were talking about differences in genders and who could be useful based on their gender, blah blah, any thoughts come to mind? And then he says what he assumes she's thinking.
The obvious ones, right?
Yeah. And he's like, "Can you go get that off the shelf?" And I thought he was testing her here, because I thought
she's not allowed to read, right? So she's not even allowed to, presumably, even allowed to read the titles to find out which one.
Exactly. And she's sort of going over to the book, and he does actually say it's the brown one with the yellow binding or whatever.
Yellow letters, yeah. Like, he goes, oh, it's on that stack, third one down, yellow letters. So anyone could have found it.
Yeah. So he describes it, but she comes over and she sort of kneels as she hands it to him, and what I love though is, and this was kind of a theme going through season 2 as well, but like especially now with Lawrence, is she's not worried about hiding how she feels about this. Like, she's saying the words she's supposed to say, but the look she's giving him here is daggers. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Like she is not hiding how she feels. And then later on we have to see in the study, and we have this great thing where he flips it up saying, "No, I'm not Waterford. I'm not going to fall for this stupid. Don't even try." And they have the talk about Emily in the debate. He's like, "We'll go for a drive," and he takes her out to this processing area, this plant, where several women are in cages, and they're just waiting to be shipped off to the colonies. And he says, "Look, I saved 6. There's 6 positions for Marthas. I was able to save 6 of them. And it's better than none. Cold hard. Cold again.
I think it was 5, but yeah,
5 or whatever.
Well, it's even worse when it's less, isn't it?
This has not changed the point of this scene. Well, it's 5 or 6, you prick. Right. So he's like, yeah, 5 or 6, and then like the real gut punch of the scene comes where he's like, "And you're going to pick them." And she's like, "Wait, what?" his hands are, here's all the files, all that information. Again, knowing full well she's not supposed to read. So he doesn't care about the rules when it's like he's doing his own thing. He's like, whatever.
No, and it's interesting. You can read this either way, as this is cruel, making her kind of have to be involved. She'll hate that. Having to actually willingly send people away to the colonies.
But here's the other reading, though.
Yeah.
The other reading, going back to what I said earlier, is that he wants to make her a resistance fighter. He's actually doing this to toughen her up.
More specifically, I think he's grooming her for leadership to make the decisions.
Yeah. And I think the fighting that he's having with her here and all the things he's prodding her into, he's talking about people being useful, because he cracks that really awful joke, as she's leaving. He's like, see, a woman can be useful, and everyone, all the men laugh, and it's like, but I think he actually sees leadership potential in her. I think he sees, no, you can fight this or you can be the resistance, you can fight back.
Yeah, here's the thing. We know he doesn't believe that women can't be useful, because he even if we take everything he said as fact, Emily was smart, therefore she is useful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And he sees June as being, no, you can fight this. You can be the balance here. And, we end the episode with June's narration where she's basically like, because after she's made her choices, because she sees Serena, we'll talk about Serena more in depth in a bit, but she sees Serena and she gives her a bit of a speech about her being strong. Like, you're strong and you're a mother because of the choice you made. And we have to actually, and we are stronger.
And bonding so much.
I know it is, but she's like, we're stronger than we think we are. And then she makes the choices, and she gives Joseph the choices, and she goes into the Martha, because there's a new Martha there who they can't speak in front of. But when she's away, she's speaking to the main Martha, and she's like, "Hey, I've got 5 or 6 new recruits. One's a doctor, one's a mechanic, one's a lawyer. And it's like she picked based on profession, she picked based on their skills."
Yeah.
And it was almost like, you could see this as her undermining Lawrence, or she's doing exactly what he was training her to do, was to pick the smart options, but depending on who could be useful to the cause.
And I think that seems the more likely outcome, is that he's grooming her.
And one was a thief. That's why I mentioned one was a thief. I thought that was particularly noteworthy.
Yeah.
Be sneaky.
Listen, I think it's the most likely option that he is grooming her for this. But you never know. It could swerve us. She could be actually, this could be an act of rebellion in itself, and her being defiant.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think she knows necessarily that this is his intention. No. So it could be an act of rebellion, but that's still what he's doing.
It could be, yeah. But I mean, without his knowledge, it could have been.
But here's the thing, though. This is maybe getting a little bit, Avengers Infinity War, 16 million possible outcomes, only one will do the right thing kind of thing, right? But, like, what if his like, he was influential in creating Gilead? What if his thing was, he didn't tell the rest of the idiot men this, obviously, but what if, like, he knew that eventually to actually restore balance, there would have to be a resistance, and it would have to sort of end in kind of it'd have to come to an end, kind of thing.
I don't know. I suspect he wasn't maybe that far-sighted. I think he had what he thought was a great idea, and as it's gone on over the years,
he's recalibrated. You're saying
there's been problems. It maybe hasn't gone exactly as he'd planned, and he's like, right, okay, I need a different approach. And I think he is masterminding this kind of.
Oh no, I think he is. I think, because you said without him knowing, when we're talking about is this an act of rebellion or not, I would go as far as to speculate that he wants her to think it's an act of rebellion.
Probably, yeah.
He wants to, because the idea of her thinking she's rebelling is what will motivate her to fight back in a weird way. That said, her speech at the end, though, is very much, no. Like, we're going to watch the men, and then we're going to make sure we can strike. We're going to become their nightmare. This idea, we're going to watch from within, we're going to know their strengths and their weaknesses, and then we're going to eventually strike. And this is very different to the way she thought in seasons 1 and 2. This is, no, she's planning, she's thinking about how she can fight, she's thinking about how they can win eventually. This is more forward thinking.
It's interesting. Yeah,
it's a very different dynamic for the show. It's funny because the early reviews of the first 6 episodes said they felt it was spinning its wheels, and I certainly did not feel that with this episode. I felt like this was a whole new.
Not in these 3, that's for sure.
Yeah, maybe 4, 5, and 6 will all be really slow and dull, but
Yeah, maybe because this is the case. Hulu puts out 3 this week. They're designed to be watched as almost kind of one, opening
Yeah,
salvo,
the
right?
ending of this episode definitely felt like a mission statement for the season. Like this is what this season is.
Right. So I can see, assuming those reviews were, accurate.
Or that we
I can see it.
or that we agree with them. There's no such thing as an accurate review, I'd say.
Right. Sure. Assuming we agree with them, I can see it being 4, 5, and 6 being the problem in the sense that, okay, here's your week one. They're designed as, okay, kickstart it. Here's your pacing going, full steam ahead, and then it slows down as we get into, okay, now we're actually into the season.
That's it. I mean, it's pointless to speculate, really, just based on
Yeah,
other
yeah.
reviews. I think I just wanted to mention that based on these first 3, I don't agree with those reviews.
No, not based on these first 3. Absolutely not.
So yeah, so yeah, I mean that's per usual. It was good stuff. With June and the kind of the growing idea of her becoming a fighter. And what I like about this is I think it'll lead to some really nice episodes where they'll have a clear goal. Like, okay, so we have to get an item, but they can't just get an item because none of them are in positions to get the item. So it becomes a bit of almost like a secret heist or something like that. I could see fun
Yeah,
action plots almost coming out of this, which will bring all the suspense and all the tension of almost being caught and things like that.
yeah. No, that could be good.
So that makes sense to me. Um, yeah, Serena Joy is. I'm surprised we've seen all these characters this quickly. I thought it may go a little bit longer before we see some of them. I thought when we saw Waterford early on, I thought, okay, it makes sense. He's here because it's all the commanders. I wasn't necessarily sure that we were going to be seeing Nick and seeing Serena
Yeah.
in the same episode.
Do you know just something amusing based on something you just said there?
What's that?
Last episode, I think it was where we spoke about the names of the handmaidens, and you'd always assumed it was the surnames, right?
Oh, sure.
Um, it wasn't until right then when you said Waterford that I realized you must have been saying that the entire time instead of Waterford.
Yeah, well, that's because I thought it was the Offord came from his last
Yeah.
name.
No, I know, but I'd never heard you say it that way before. And it was just when you said it then I actually heard you say it like as if it was Fred at the end.
Yeah,
And
I've been saying that
yeah.
the whole time. That's not changing.
No, I know, but it was one of those things I'd never noticed you say it wrong until we'd had
It's a
that
subtle
discussion.
difference. If you're not looking for it, it's a subtle difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Serena's living with her mother right now. Seems to be separated from Waterford, but I really liked her stuff with June. I thought that scene was fantastic, and seeing with her mother was interesting as well. Seeing because her mother's basically like, oh, basically snap out of this and go be with your husband. Because if you're not with your husband, then your status in society in Gilead
Is on the drop.
is reduced dramatically.
Yeah.
And we see him. He's with a Jezebel, I think, practicing his speech and how to win back Serena. Because this thing, you don't see who he's talking to, and you think he's talking to her. Although I was kind of expecting a swerve given how it was filmed.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. But
A little bit pathetic of him, wasn't it?
A little bit pathetic. Which I think it's interesting now how pathetic he feels in this show. Like given how powerful and evil he felt. I mean, he's still evil, but like he felt.
Now that we've got Lawrence kind of around, who is clearly more powerful and has much more say over things, and is willing to just break the rules and do his own thing. Watford, he feels pathetic for having always, followed the rules to the letter. Right? It feels like he never really knew what he was doing. He just went along with it.
Yeah. Because there's that moment in the meeting as well where one of the guys says something like, "Oh, we have to watch these resistances. We can't have our women acting out of line." And there's like a shot of Waterford's like face. His eyes are just kind of like just leering at him. It's just kind of this moment of like, yeah, kind of like my wife. Yeah, she's having ideas. Yeah, kind of moment.
Tell me about it.
So, no, that stuff was good. And seeing Serena with her mother and her mother's attitude with her, and being very uncaring about her. Certainly, Apple does not feel like it fell far from the tree in that sense.
I wasn't as into these scenes, but I don't think I was into this relationship as much last season either.
I was fine with these scenes. Honestly, the only scene that I had a problem with not because there's anything super wrong with it necessarily. I just thought it was a bit hackneyed. Was Serena getting into the ocean?
Oh, for the ending.
I felt like that was a bit like,
Yeah,
you
bit
know,
much.
it was a movie trope. It wasn't something that it feels like people actually do. It was a movie
No,
trope.
no. It was a bit cheesy,
But yeah, okay, it was a bit cheesy.
which can be fine, but maybe not in this show.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it fit. It didn't feel like it fit this show that much to me. But you know, that guy's with us. Then Nick, we should mention Nick, who does come by to see June. He sees her a little bit at the meeting, but he comes by later now that he knows she's there, and it's a fairly well done scene. He's saying that he's been shipped off to the front, which is Chicago, where the resistance is fighting them.
So like, he's probably gonna die.
Probably gonna die, and he wanted to say goodbye, and she's very kind of, at this point she's at the lowest she is in the episode at this point. And it actually has quite a sweet ending to the scene where after she's kind of basically told him to piss off, and he just goes out the door, and he's felt the emotion of it, and he's leaning against the wall. She just kind of goes up and like they hold hands between the doors. So it's a really kind of simple sort of movie shot, but unlike the ocean stuff, this just kind of felt like a nice composition.
Yeah, this doesn't come off as awkward or cheesy or anything like
Yeah.
that. It plays nicely.
And they just sort of they go back inside and shut the door, and you hear the door lock. What's interesting because I feel like this show, of course, has had a lot of different kinds of sex scene, right? We've had obviously very horrific sex scenes. We've had romantic sex scenes. We've had sex scenes in the and back in the past in the modern day times, and we've had sex scenes in Gilead. We've had them having sex before. I felt like this was probably the first time, at least in my memory in the show, in Gilead's part of the show, where it felt like a very normal, like, we're just going to imply they had sex in kind of a sweet way, as opposed to...
There's a weird level of privacy.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good word for it. There's privacy to it. It feels like that's for them, that's not for us. We've seen it enough. We know what they're like. That's a weird way to phrase it.
It is an unusual feeling in this show to have privacy.
Yeah. It feels... Yeah. It stood out to me. It stood out to me that this is how they chose to cover this scene and cover the fact that they were probably having like a sort of one last hurrah behind the door. It felt sweeter than just about any other sex scene we've had. If you can even call it that, it's not really a sex scene because there's not sex.
No,
explicitly.
It's where it ends, but it's not a sex scene.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like in a lot of movies and shows, you'd have like a scene like this that then this way to imply the sex, which would be fine. It doesn't come off as like tropey or cheesy or anything like that. It's just kind of, no, we don't have to see it because it's just not that type of movie or it's whatever. But in this show,
it's really common in most TV.
Yeah, but in this show, it felt like, I guess what you just said there's the key phrase. It's really common in modern TV, but this Gilead is not common. Sex has been, bastardized,
the way it's been
and it's
portrayed
been
since the very first episode.
It's been taken from normalcy, and by doing it in a typical TV way, it's showing that at least this one part or this one relationship, despite the weirdness of how it formed, because it's the handmaid and
has some relative normalcy to it.
Yes, it's become normal in some weird way.
Yeah,
in a way it wasn't. They've reached this level of like, no, they actually have some kind of relationship. And we've talked in the past about how she's actually married, but how, like, obviously the circumstances put them in this really weird place, and so
things got shitty. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, so no, and she's looking at him for an ally, and he can't be that ally, which is why at least partly why she's upset with him early on in the scene. So, but no, really well done.
Yeah,
really well done. And that was pretty much the episode. I think this first three, much like I remember this back in season 1 when they put out the first 3 in that, because they didn't do it with season 2. Season 2 was just the first 2.
Yes.
But it really does feel like the 3 episodes as a whole is like a kind of a mission statement for the season, and the final speech especially feels like that. It feels like, no, this is what the season is going to really be about.
Yeah, because over these 3 episodes, we've kind of established all the the positions for all the players.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like with the Waterfords, they felt like they were, okay, we're completely breaking apart at the end of the first episode, but here we are, okay, we see where they actually are in society. Going forward for this season, we know what their status quo is to work from, rather than just, the burning house.
Yeah.
Um,
Says up that obviously we at least had some stuff in Canada last episode, so we have some different. We have all the players set up, as you say.
Yeah.
Get it going forward. So what I will say is I feel like this is probably the longest we've been this season before some flashbacks, which maybe they're thinning down a little bit as we go forward, which would make some sense.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, but yeah, just that was observation. Just before we go, I will mention at least one commenter was with me on the Offred.
Oh, really?
Mistake. Yes, at least one person thought it was because the end of the name was Fred.
Okay.
Do you know what I think the confusing part is here? Is that the actor's name is Joseph, which is Lawrence's first name. So I keep thinking his first name is Joseph. Even as I'm talking, it's not Fred. It can't be Fred. I'm sure it's Joseph. Anyway, but yeah, that is Handmaid's Tale episode 3 of season 3. Obviously, we got to this one a little bit later on the first two, so we'll actually have the episode 4 review up within a day, basically, of this one going up. So look forward to that. Yeah, so once again, Handmaid's Tale reviews are brought by one of our patrons, Cindy Palacios. So thanks to her. Get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel, you can do that over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv. You can obviously sponsor at the higher tiers, but you can obviously just spend as little as $1 per month and keep the reviews coming with your support. Otherwise, let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all the usual things. All that does help as well. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?